Hello everyone and welcome to this video about why your friends have more friends than you do. And this presentation is based on this paper made by Scott L. Feld, and I suggest you check it out because it's a very nice paper. So yeah, let's get started with my slides here and let's see why this is true. Like, why does your friends have more friends than you do? Think about that for a while. Yes. And then let's start with some basic terminology here. So I'm going to go with some basic terminology. If you imagine you have something that looks like this. So you have a vertex. Also, I'm going to call them nodes interchangeably. And let's say that this is a person. You have some other person right here. And they're friends with each other. So they have an edge going between them, right? And the edge here is signifying the friendship between them. And then you have some other person here, and they are also friends with this guy, but these two aren't friends because they don't have any edge between them. This vertex here, it has a degree of 2 because it has 2 outgoing edges or ingoing edges. So it has a degree of 2. So like, pause the video and let that sink in because this is terminology: vertex, node, outgoing edge, 2. Therefore, it has a degree of 2. This is called vertex and node. This is called edges. And yeah, vertex, node, same thing, right? Okay, so let's get to the next step. So let's say that you put these nodes and edges together into some bigger component like structure. You're going to get something that is called a graph. It's going to look like this. So here you can see Kevin Bacon, right? He's acted in a lot of different random movies, and what this particular graph shows is that Kevin Bacon, he acted in, signified by this edge, in some other with some other person, right? So all of the nodes here are different actors, and the edges signifies that they acted in the same movie. So what does it mean? In this particular case, it means that if you build up this graph, you're going to have two important variables going on here. You're going to have something called the diameter of this graph, and you're going to have something called the clustering of this graph. So let's start with the diameter. So with the diameter here, it means that if you take any node, like in this graph, how far away from Kevin Bacon are you? And if you pick, let's say you pick this node right here. How far away from Kevin Bacon are you taking the shortest path to him? So this is pretty obvious. It's one jump to Kevin Bacon, right? If you take this node, any other node, that is, the shortest path to him is also one jump. And if you do this for every node, so we have 1, 1, here is 1, 2, so it's 2. If you take all of these jumps to Kevin Bacon, which one of these jumps taking the shortest path is the longest path? And in this particular case, the diameter of this graph is 2. And it turns out that the Kevin Bacon effect, the reason why I used Kevin Bacon here is because there is something called the Kevin Bacon effect, because, you know, he acted in a lot of random movies, and it turns out that the diameter of real-world graphs, like the acted-in graph, is usually very, very small. In the Kevin Bacon effect, it's 6. So you just have to jump 6 other actors until you end up with Kevin Bacon, right? There's other variations on this particular aspect also. 6 degrees of separation is called also, and they have some other alternative names for it. But here we're going to go with the Kevin Bacon effect, right? So in this graph, you just have a small step that'll bring you to Kevin Bacon. This is called the diameter of the graph. You can also see that we're going to talk about clustering. You can see that Kevin Bacon here is friends with some random guy here and some other guy here, and signified by the edges here. But not only that, because they also know each other independently of him. So this forms a triangle right here. And you can also see we also have a triangle here. And this means that you will have a clustering going on here because of highly clustering people that basically know each other. And you can also see that we have another cluster going on here with this triangle here, but we don't have it fully clustered because we're missing stuff here. And this is important because in real-world graph, we tend to have high clustering at the same time as we have a low diameter. So we're going to have a lot of these triangles going on in the real world graph, when you graph off problems like your friendships and stuff like this, like it goes on in Facebook, for example. We're going to have, and let this sink in, we're going to have high clustering and low diameter, right? So very few steps, but very high clustering. So let's take a look at how this is going to look. So if you imagine something that looks like this, so you have, for every node here, you have 4 outgoing edges. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you have this for all of the nodes in the graph. This means that you will have a very high clustering because you will have all these triangles going on in this graph. But you will have a very high diameter, because if you want to move from this side of the graph to the other side here, you're going to have very many jumps. And if you have more nodes and scale this up to 1,000,000 trillion nodes, you're going to have basically some more and more jumps. It doesn't scale very good. So the diameter of this graph is very high, something that is not the case for real-world graphs. And on the other extreme of this side, you have something like a random graph. So here you would have a very low diameter because you're just making random jumps all the way. You can pretty easily go from one side of the graph to the other one, just taking some, maybe 1 or 2 steps here. But you won't have the clustering, basically. You don't find a lot of triangles going on here. Maybe in this particular case, but when you scale it up, you won't. So what is like in between here? What is going on here in the small world? This is called a small world graph. So the thing is that this dependency to like giving away like clustering versus diameter, they're not linearly parallel. So what this means in real world is that in small world graphs, what you do is you start with a regular graph, and with some probability p, you make it just a random jump to any other node. Like here you can see that happening, or here. And what this will do to your graph is that you will have the high clustering. You will have a pretty high clustering, not as high as a regular graph, but very close to it. And also you would also have a very low diameter, like not as low as in a random graph, but still pretty low. And why does this matter? Because this is how real world graphs work. Something like this. If you imagine this is not Facebook, but it could easily have been. So you can see you have this like clustering going on here. They know each other, and you have this close friendship, right? But you also have these long range links, which will bring down the diameter of the graph, right? And you can imagine like this is the random guy that you know from Australia, or this is the like German dude that you for some reason know, and this is going to bring down the diameter. On the other hand, this is probably your family and the people you went to high school with, or whatever, that they know each other, and you know each one of them in the cluster. It's going to cluster real high. So if you take this graph and simplify it a little bit, so here I remove all the clustering that goes on and just kept the low diameter in order to simplify it visually. So now we'll get back to the question, why does your friends have more friends than you do? So imagine you pick one random node here. What is the most likely node that you will pick? And also, like, what is the less likely node that you will pick? You will not be very likely to pick one of these black ones, right? You will be more likely to pick one of the red or blue ones or gray ones over here, or most likely here, right? What does it mean? It means that if you pick one of these, you can see that they only have one edge going to the center of this one. So if you measure this node, in this particular case, it has one edge going in here, signified by I have one friend, and it is this black node here. This means I have one friend, but how many friends does that friend have? It has very many friends, right? And this is true for all of these guys' friends, you know. So unless you're one of these black nodes here in the center, you're gonna be, which is not very likely, you're more likely to be one of these, right? It means that you only have one friend, or maybe a few friends. Like, this is oversimplified, of course, but you can see the point, right? That you're most likely one of these. And that means that you have one friendship, but that friendship that you have, it has a lot of friends. And this is the basic gist of like why does the graph look like this? to start with, like as we talked with real world graphs, long range, short link, like this. This is the small world graph is very close to how stuff like Facebook is put together, actually out of basically by nature. And there's a lot of papers on this, like you can research small world graph and Erdos Renegade and all of this if you want to dive deeper into this concept. But as far as my understanding now, is this is how real world graphs like friendship and Facebook and all the community apps or other aspects in nature looks like. And when it looks like this, why is it true that your friends has more friends than you do? It's because of the structure of this, right? So think about that for a while, and I hope you enjoy this video. I didn't dive too deeply into the theory, I hope, and I hope you don't I don't lost you like halfway through there, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video basically, and I hope to see you in some other videos that I have, right? So don't forget to subscribe, and if you have any questions, just put it in the comments, right? So see you guys, bye bye.